All right. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome from wherever you're joining. It's a joy to have you with us. First webinar I've done in a long time. This might be one of the first webinars after COVID. So good to see some familiar names and good to see some new friends. So my name is Ravi Verma. I am the co-founder of this webinar, or actually this meetup. So I want to start by telling you a little bit about the history of this meetup, the intent, and then I'll introduce our guest, Monika, and then we're going to dive into the conversations. So I founded this meetup a really long time ago, maybe 12, 13 years ago, I forget. And it was called Agile DevOps DFW. Those days, DevOps was the rage. So I was trying to find an intersection between Agile and DevOps. And then during COVID, I switched from an in-person to a webinar format. And then after COVID, I went back to in-person again. And now there are situations where I want to talk about something with a person like Monika, and Monika is in the Netherlands. And it's not, we made a choice. We don't want to have Monika fly over from Netherlands to here. So I restarted the webinar format because it gives me flexibility to have conversations that I can't always have in Dallas, Texas. So that's a little bit of the history of our meetup. For this webinar, we will be monitoring the chat window. So if you have questions, comments, please post them in the chat window, and we will invite you. I also have Mike here. So Mike is the co-organizer, Mike Torrance. So I'm going to promote Mike to a panelist. So Mike, if you have anything else to add, please chime in at any point. Please dance in the moment and add anything that you would like to add. I will also make you, let's see, a co-host so you can share your video. Okay, so Mike and I are co-organizers of this meetup group. Normally in Dallas, we meet in a company called Improving in Plano, Texas. So if there's anybody in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, usually we meet there on the second Monday of each month, around between 5:30 and 7:30. So if you happen to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area on the second Monday of the month, please come and join us. So that's a little bit about this, the history of this meetup. I want to talk about our next event. So the next event, let me see if I can share my screen. Next event is an interesting topic. It's about the intersection of artificial intelligence. Are you able to see my screen? Yes. It's about the intersection of artificial intelligence and Agile. So we have an in-person event on April 8th. This is the day of the solar eclipse. And Dallas is actually in the viewing area, but the solar eclipse will be long over. So you don't have to choose between the two. You can watch the solar eclipse and come to our meetup. So in this meetup, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how can you use ChatGPT to accelerate agile delivery, not with an intent of replacing human beings, but with the intent of complementing the irreplaceable ingenuity of human beings and accelerating agility. So I'm giving you a sneak peek on our next in-person meetup. And if you're interested and in the area, I'd love to have you join. If you are interested, but you're not in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, I can also try to do a repeat in a webinar format. So please communicate with me and let me know if this would be of interest. So that's about our next event. All right. So I want to get started and I want to welcome Monika. And Monika is an ORSC certified team coach. She's also the chief people officer for one of my companies, which is Al Dente. And she is my team coach, and helps me live a life where I am true to my values when it comes to being a leader. So Monika is based out of The Hague. Monika, what else would you like the audience to know about you before we dive in?
I think you said it all, Ravi, that I am a team coach and I'm certified as a team coach. I've coached a couple of organizations and the teams, and I like to work with agile teams because there is where the team identity is really built up. So that's my background. Yes.
Very good. And Mike, along the way, please chime in with your questions, because as a Scrum Master, you are probably noticing things related to the topic of trust. And I know trust is very important to you, Mike, because that was one of the first topics of our in-person meetup in improving. So, Mike, I'd like you to introduce yourself briefly. What is it that you would like our audience to know about you? And then what are you curious about in this webinar? And please interrupt at any point in the webinar so we can deliver value to our audience.
Okay, well, I'm Mike Torrance. I am a former member of a cohort for a nonprofit that Ravi's a co-founder for, Agile for Patriots, which is where I got my start in the Agile world. So I'm a veteran, and I'm happy to give back to that program. And I was afforded a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't have otherwise had if it hadn't been for the kind heart of Ravi and another gentleman named Greg. So I started my journey before COVID, and now it's changed everything since COVID. So the remote working portion of it, I'm very interested, because now that I'm at another financial institute, aside from the first one I started at, my teams have been remote the whole time. So it's very challenging, very interesting, and I'm always looking to find new ways to connect us, because it's a lot more difficult to connect virtually than it was in person.
Right. Cool. Thank you, Mike. And I saw a comment that there's an interest in the future AI discussion online. So I might do a repeat session. I might do a repeat workshop for our next in-person meetup. So Trisha, thank you for sharing that. So let me give you some context about this webinar. The first thing, I am going to be very vulnerable in this webinar, and I'm going to share a personal failure. Why is this important to me? If I look at social media, all of social media seems to be full of people who are living the perfect life and have nothing but successes. It's like a never-ending series of successes. And when I look at that, my inner critic, as if my inner critic needed any more ammunition to beat me up. My inner critic has got a never-ending reel of all the mistakes I've made in my life and is never hesitant to play the tape. So, but what happens is I'm trying hard to manage this inner critic, who's coming from a good place, who wants me to learn and who wants me to live a happy life. And now I go to social media, and now it's nothing but a never-ending feed of all the beautiful things people are doing. It's like, oh my God, now my inner critic has gotten more video to play to me. So I don't want to be that person. I want to be a person who can be transparent about not being a perfect person. Yes, I made mistakes. So what? I made a mistake. I try to punch at the next higher weight category. I want to keep sucking. I want to suck at the next higher level, and I failed. Great. What can I learn from it? And now, how can I not suck at this level, but now aim for the next category and suck at that level? So I want to normalize failure, and I want to use myself, and I want to use my failure as a stepping stone, and I want to model a certain kind of behavior. That just because I failed, it doesn't mean it's the end of the world. I can have fun with it. I can make it playful. I can learn from it, and I can grow. So that's a reason why I am choosing failure as this topic. And it doesn't have to be serious. We can have fun with it. So we're going to have fun today. There's a second reason that I decided to have this conversation. A lot of people are now wrestling with this work from home, return to office, 3 days, hybrid. I have friends who are now being forced, I won't name companies, who are being forced to come back to office in some very big companies. And I'm also seeing some messages from people like Elon Musk, and there are other people like on CNBC, where they say you are pretending to work from home. So I feel there's a polarization in the industry that either you trust people and you let them work from home, or if you are forcing them to come back to office, that means you are a distrustful person. And there's a lot of fighting going on, and I'm here to explore a third option. Is there a third way to look at it other than black or white? You're right, I'm wrong. So these are two intents I have for this conversation, and we'll see where this goes. It is not going to be a choreographed conversation. You will notice me looking in this direction because I have your Q&A and your chat panel on this monitor. So I will try my best to integrate your thoughts into this conversation by looking at your comments. And I don't know if Mike, you also, if you might be willing to support me, if you can see the chat panel, and if you notice something that you feel should be discussed, please, would you be willing to bring that up, please?
Sure thing.
All right. Okay. So let's dive in. I'll give you some setup. So I have this product. I'm an Agile coach, and I've been helping companies with Agile adoption for maybe 12 years. And I started noticing a pattern. A lot of my companies, when they attend my training, what I tell them in theory makes sense. And I can see heads nodding. Yes, we'll do it. Especially when it comes to data-driven agility. You have a hypothesis, you deliver a user story or a feature or a release to the market, then you see how does the market behave. You learn and you adjust your hypothesis and you launch the next experiment. This is what agility is about: transparency, inspection, adaptation. So I would tell my clients, create a data-driven scoreboard about how the market is reacting and learn from the data, learn from the behaviors of customers, not just what they say, but what they do, and then feed that wisdom back into your release roadmap. Where people used to get stuck was they were not able to create a data-driven, a market-driven scoreboard. So I said, I am going to create a product that solves this problem. And that's how Al Dente was born. And the story for today's webinar is my product Al Dente. So I dreamt up a product that would help my clients not suffer. And then I started growing my team. And usually I hire from inside my network, but this was one area, skill set, where I didn't have anyone in my network. So I placed a job opening for different people, different roles, because now my dream was growing bigger than my team. So I had to hire. And as I started hiring people from across the world, by design, I wanted a work from anywhere team. Why? Because I don't have to pay for office space. And two, it dramatically expands the pool of talent. So it was in my strategic interest to build a work from anywhere Agile team. And this is where the story gets interesting. So I hired people, some worked out, some didn't work out. And I started feeling that my trust was being violated. And I wanted to explore with Monika, how can a leader behave in a way that helps them build work from anywhere Agile teams where there is mutual trust, mutual respect, and they do great things together. So that's the backstory. So Monika, what else would you like to add in terms of context that you would like our attendees to be aware of as we go further in this conversation?
Yeah. So to add to what you said, Ravi, is that there is this dream of building up a product, which really, you really had a purpose behind it.
Mhm.
And you started there. And then when you started hiring, there are these normal feelings that come up for you as a leaders. And let's discuss about those feelings. Because we are all trained that way. This is how traditional management system was before pandemic. This is how organizations worked. And we are transitioning into something. So it's also very normal to make mistakes. It's very normal for a leader to feel not safe. And so how does he or she use that to build a team? How do you use this power to build a team? And then number of challenges will come along the way. And these are very normal challenges. When two people are working, there are very different point of views that come up. How do you all become part of that dream that you have dreamt? And then together make it a dream. So I mean, I'm just adding to what you just said. So how does a leader navigate through these challenges and change, which by the way is very normal?
Okay, good. So we're going to traverse the arc of the life cycle of a relationship between a leader and members of a work from anywhere team. And along the way, we are going to explore what challenges might a leader encounter in building a work from anywhere team that trusts each other. And then along the way, what we do is we'll try to give you an actionable tip or a tool or a way of thinking that can give you new options. Because the purpose of this webinar is that you have greater self-awareness about how the inner team, which is something I learned from Monika, you may have an inner team which might have some values, some aspirations, which could manifest in your outer team. And if we can use this webinar to help you get more awareness, self-awareness about your inner team, it could give you more choices about how to manage the team. And perhaps when you are more choiceful and intentional about managing that team, it could have a ripple effect on the outer team. So let's explore that. So Monika, let's talk about a leader. Imagine there's a leader like me who has a dream like al dente. And now this leader is about to expand the team. What would you like this leader? Where would you like this leader to start focusing as even before the job opening is posted? That can help them build a team that is trusting and collaborative.
Yeah, and you are an agile expert, but I really want to focus about that product vision. And more than the product vision, that vision that you have for both the product and the organization. What is behind that? So what is the real purpose? What drives you? And become very clear about it. That this is what drives me, and this is what the product is going to serve to. And that is the purpose and story that you are going to use when you're hiring people, because that is what is going to connect you in the relationship that you are now going to build. So that purpose becomes very important. And that gives the team also an identity. And I'll keep talking about the team identity throughout my conversations and how do you build upon it. But that's the starting point. That's really what lies, which is inexplicable. It is lying in the bottom, like the roots of a tree. So it's there, and it really has a power to manifest into a big tree, something that provides shelter, something that's green, that's natural. So really focusing on that seed of what it is, and using it as a story to tell it to your team when you start hiring. So that's where any questions that you have to ask from now.
Very cool. Yeah, so if I were to apply that to myself, I cannot bear to see my clients suffer. Actually, I can't bear to see another human being suffer. And when I see a human being suffer, I have to do something. And I ask myself, now there are crises happening in the world, there are wars, and I am working with my coach on finding constructive ways to handle situations which are clearly out of my sphere of control. Otherwise, I will drive myself batshit crazy. So that is the root of the tree, that if I can't bear to see a human being suffer. Now, once I have eliminated areas which are outside of my sphere of control, now we identify the sweet spot where I feel I have power to make a positive impact to reduce the suffering. And that's why I created Al Dente. That's why I do what I do. And if you wanted to, we could go even one level further, which is if I were to do what you said, which is be vulnerable. Why is it important for me that people don't suffer, that if I have the power to reduce suffering, I should exercise the power? I feel like it goes back to when I was a 5-year-old child at home. I would wait for my dad to come home at the end of each day, my sister and I, and we would long for him to come home so we could play with him. And there were days when he could come home full of energy and joy, and we play with him. Those are the most beautiful moments. And there were days when he would come home and he was just completely demoralized. And he would sit at the table, he would talk to my mom, and I knew that someone did something not nice to my dad at work. I didn't realize, I was probably 5 years old. I decided in that moment, when I grow up, I'm not going to let that happen to anybody's dad. And my life has been defined by that. So for me, what's happening is, in my sphere of influence, there are moms and dads who are going home. Somebody's waiting. If I have power to help them go home with a smile on their face, a sense of pride and accomplishment, so they have energy to give to whoever's waiting, I can't not do anything. I don't have a choice. So my takeaway is, did I share this with my team? And if I did not, why not? And maybe that's something I'm going to explore, that if I want to build a team that can trust each other, that I can trust, that's collaborative, that can work from anywhere, I don't have to micromanage them. Maybe this is one thing I'm taking away. Be vulnerable. Show them the roots of the tree.
Yeah, and that's part of the culture that you are trying to build. The other part is also about the story behind your product. And that also becomes very important because, or story behind the organization that you are creating. So when you are, one is culture, and we'll talk about culture in a bit, but really to start from this purpose behind which this team is getting created.
Yes.
So that's really your product, your organization, your vision. Be very clear about it and keep reinforcing that in the team, because that builds the team.
Yeah. And that reminds me, so I shared my professional purpose or professional reason for being. Let me take that. How my personal purpose influences my professional purpose. And now if I go to the product purpose, so for Al Dente, I remember I go to client after client. I went to this multi-billion-dollar company. I have a conversation with the CEO, and I show the CEO a mock-up, a very ugly mock-up on Microsoft Paint of the scoreboard. And the CEO, I can see him physically leaning forward. And he says to me, when can I have that? So I showed him a vision. I showed him a dream of a market-driven, data-driven scoreboard. The CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company is telling me, when can I have it? It took me 2 years. I couldn't give him the scoreboard. We spent 1 year because they had chosen a product called Tableau. And they said, we don't have licenses for Tableau. This is a $3 billion company. Tableau license is probably $10,000 per year. It took me 1 year to get approval for a $10,000 license for a $3 billion company. After that, it got stuck for 1 year because they were not willing to put an Atlassian Jira plugin for Tableau. Like, oh my God, we're a $3 billion company. We are flying blind. There is no data-driven scoreboard. And for me, I was like, I can't take this. I have to build a product so that tomorrow, if there is a CEO who says, I want this, without getting buried in any red tape, any Tableau BS, any Atlassian, I can say in 5 minutes, I can show you the scope. So that is the story behind the product purpose.
Yeah.
And so what I'm taking away from you is, if I want to build a team that can trust each other, I mean, I've got to talk about the reason for the existence of the product.
Yeah.
So
yes,
now
go ahead.
And by the way, Monika, your camera, you have to adjust your camera. I know you can't see, or you have to move back. So Monika doesn't like to see herself in Zoom. It makes her self-conscious. So she has no clue where the face is relative to the camera. Okay. So for me, that's takeaway number 2. I want to talk a little bit about takeaway, where I struggled with point number 3. And you helped me with this. I have some very strong, non-negotiable values and principles about how people should treat each other and what it means to be a professional, a technology professional. And what I noticed in my struggles with building a work from anywhere agile team was that it felt like these values were not shared. For example, I have an expectation, and I learned this from the US military folks that I worked with. A lot of the US military veterans that I work with in Agile for Patriots, they say if you're on time, if you're on time, you're late. So when I work with US military veterans, most of them will join the Zoom call 5 minutes before. And although I come from India, and there is a joke about Indian Standard Time, where Indian Standard Time is usually in 60 to 90 minutes after whatever you're promised, right? So I come from a different culture, and I like this culture, where if you're on time, you're late. So with some of my team members who are from around the world, from different cultures, this has been a bone of contention, where people are showing up late and I am going like batshit crazy. And maybe that's chipping away the trust. And there were many other areas. So can you guide a leader on how should they tackle this topic of values? What is the culture? What is negotiable? What is non-negotiable? How do these values and expectations play into trust and work from anywhere agile, or forget agile, work from anywhere teams?
Yeah. And Ravi, I would like to point out that there could be many things happening to you as in your internal team. So it's not the time to look into it that just now.
Yeah.
But there could be some of these non-negotiables that a leader creates is also driven from fear. And just be aware that if it is being driven from your fears or it is being driven from your values. And that's where you lean into your inner team and start understanding where does it come from. And if you really feel that it comes from your values, then this is the next set of stories that you're going to tell to your team. Why are these values important for you? What does it deliver for you? Uh, and there has to be a personal story behind it of being punctual. What have you learned from it? So this is something that you will build into the team again around punctuality, and also being aware that different cultures have different, like you said, India. I'm also an Indian and I don't agree with it 100%, but we have a different relationship with time vis-a-vis the Western world, because Western world went into industrial revolution much earlier than we did. We come from an agricultural background. We still depend on the sun for our timings. I mean, we dependent on it for a long time. So our relationship with time is different from a relationship that the Western world will have. And therefore the context of time will change. Um, I'm not saying that you should be willing to accept people 30 minutes late into your meetings. That is unacceptable, because what it means is that you're not valuing others' time. Um, so talk about it. What is it that what is the cost of not being punctual in the organization? Um, what do others think? So a team member is arriving late. Do not shame that behavior. And there are many opportunities for you to connect with the person to understand what happens. And it's a compassionate view that you'll take. And at the same time, you will take that view of letting the person know that this is the value and this is the impact that he or she has on the larger team. And you will see more often than not, if you have been compassionate with the person will begin to understand your values. Sometimes the person may not, and that's the time when probably you'll have to take another decision. But really, as a leader, understand where is this person coming from around being punctual. It could be cultural, it could be personal, it could be many things beyond our imagination also.
Yeah. So if I talk, Mike, thank you so much for fielding the questions. Did you want to?
There was a question and I didn't know if we wanted to handle it real time or at the end, but how do you handle it when your boss is consistently late? Sometimes they don't want you to start the meeting without them, but it may be 5 to 10 minutes into the meeting before they join.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, Monika, anything you want to share?
You want to say something before I?
Yeah, so this is perfect. This question is, by the way, we didn't pay this person to ask this question. But so what I'm hearing is I am bringing certain preferences or non-negotiables into a into how I like to work. Each person who is either considering joining my company or has already joined my company, they are walking around with their documentation. Okay, these are my non-negotiables. And if I am a leader, maybe I have a two-part conversation. I'm about to place a job opening. Let's say I posted a job opening on LinkedIn. How might I be transparent about my preferences, my non-negotiables, so that people who are considering applying for my job, they can make informed decisions to either opt in or opt out of the hiring process? So that's one question. And now the second thing is, how might I be curious in the interview process and perhaps during the onboarding process so that we co-create a way to work together which honors both of our non-negotiables?
Yeah.
Or how are we fluid with our non-negotiables? I don't know. What would you recommend?
Yeah,
like the boss who's joining 10 minutes late, right? How do we handle situations?
I will stay with that question which came from our audience, and then I'll come to yours. So it seems like two different questions, Ravi.
Okay.
But this is what is a true misuse of power. and the leader should be conscious about it. This is somewhere where I don't treat everybody equal. I have a different set of rules for myself, and I have different set of rules. So this is the time when the leader has to look within. It is misuse of power. And I don't know if the team really can do something about it, because the leader hasn't created a safe space in the organization. And I'm not saying that you live with that problem. But if the leader creates a safe space in the organization to talk about it, then the team member is ready to speak about it, about how does this late coming impact them. But in a gross misuse of power, this doesn't work. So really, for a leader who wants to learn, so from here I want to, for a leader who wants to learn, be aware that you have certain ranks and privileges in an organization just because you are at a hierarchy. And you cannot take away that power from yourself, because it comes to you because of the position that has been given to you. Be aware that you do not misuse this power. And there are enough practices that the leader can introduce in the organization to be aware of how her power impacts the team. But yeah, this is what I want to leave behind the audience with, that there is a power in any situation that we live in. And when you become conscious about that power, you use it judiciously. You don't misuse it.
Yeah, so the person who asked the question, now they are, in a way, one way of looking at it is, I'm screwed. I need this job. Now you have a choice. Like if you have the flexibility, maybe you can, if you don't feel safe talking to your leader, calling them out, then maybe the choice is to go find a different job, or maybe to compromise on that value of punctuality and stay here. But if they could get on a time machine and they could go back before the moment they decided to say yes to this offer, this job offer with this boss, what would you recommend that people who are applying for positions, what might they do to better understand the values of the people who have privilege and power in this company they are considering, to make decisions which are consistent with their own values and principles?
I don't know if the person really, I mean, sometimes we don't have that choice. Sometimes we are in a position, in a situation where we didn't have enough information before we made our decision. So we don't have that choice at all. And now it's very interesting to note that if the boss is late in the organization, somewhere she or he is leaving behind that message that it's okay to be late. And at the same time, he'll be wielding his power to bring down people who are not late. But the organization will have signals where things are not getting delivered on time, because the boss has set that tone in the organization in one way or the other. I'm digressing a little bit, but for a leader, it is important to understand that if you have a set of values and if you have a set of non-negotiables in the organization, really know the why of it. Why are you building it into the organization? Yeah. And are you willing to walk that talk? And what is the cost of it when it doesn't happen? So those are the information that the leader can easily collect and self-reflect and move ahead. And I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question, but sometimes when you are not in the position of power, you don't have enough choices. Unfortunately, it is true. You can use your power in a different way, but that's a very different conversation, and maybe we don't want to go there.
Yeah, I want to share my personal story, and there was a moment, Monika, which gave birth to this webinar. So first, Monika already knows this. I'm not very proud of what I'm about to share. So what happened was, there was the situation where I felt my trust was violated. And what happened was, I felt there was a fear-based response. So in my inner team, one part of me got activated, who's in the coactive terminology, we can say is a saboteur or the protector. So the warrior got activated because the warrior is trying to protect me from being abused. So one part of me got triggered and took over.
Yeah.
Now this person went to Confluence and wrote a document, non-negotiable expectations for anybody working in Al Dente. Because I'm in warrior mode. I can feel the feelings in my body now. But in that moment, I was triggered. I did not have the self-awareness then that I have now. So I got hijacked. And now that person, that part of me started dictating what I do. So it started with feelings, from feelings went to thoughts, from thoughts it went to actions. And you have a Confluence page, non-negotiable. And now people who I love and care about, like Monika and all the people who worked with me for a while, they started recoiling. I could see it. And I remember a call where Monika was there on a Zoom call. And I could tell by the expressions that something's not right. And then Monika actually told me, Ravi, this doesn't feel very agile to me. And that was when another part of me got a chance to be part of the conversation from my inner team and said, what are you doing? Who have you become? So why am I telling you this? If there is a leader who's listening to this, it is so important to surround yourself with your Monika who can call you on your BS and help you live a life that is true to your principles and values. My biggest vaccine to protect and guard myself against my humanity is surrounding myself with people who have shared values and making it safe for them to say, this just doesn't feel like the kind of person you want to be. This doesn't feel consistent with you. What you said was the personal purpose, the professional purpose, the product purpose. Something's not right. And that is the canary in the coal mine. And that can remind a leader to say, come on.
Yeah.
So that's a suggestion I have. And I think there's a two-part. For me, I work on myself. I have a bi-weekly call with a coach where I talk about things like this. And I surround myself with people like Monika, because that's where Monika introduced privilege and power. Now, when I listen to the word privilege, I typically interpret it in terms of privilege I'm seeing in the outside world. Until Monika told me, Ravi, you have privilege and you have unconscious bias. Until she said that, I didn't realize, oh my God, I'm operating from a place of massive privilege and I have so many unconscious biases. So you got to surround yourself with people who have compatible values and who have the courage to call your BS. So that's, if you're a leader and watching this, you got to do that. Otherwise, you will be a person who's hurting your team and the team has no power to challenge you. So Monika, thank you for sharing that.
And I just want to unpack what you said, Ravi, and what does it mean for the leader? Uh, Please understand that you are a human being. As a leader, you are also another human being. And it's also very normal to get into these spaces. So don't treat yourself harshly when this happens. Understand what does the neurosciences speak about it? So the neurosciences speak about two sides of our brain. One is the older part of the brain, which is, there's an echo.
It could be at my end. Let me just mute myself and see if that.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm going back to what neurosciences says is that there's a part of the brain that has evolved as we have evolved as a human being, and that has all the memories, and that also holds our emotions and our fears, and we are more predisposed to use that section of our brain. So it's very normal for the leader to start fearing something and to become reactive, reflexive, uh, and bringing up behaviors that doesn't resonate with her values. So it's very normal to be there. It's only important that you become conscious of when are you operating from a side of the brain that is fearful, and when are you operating from a side of a brain that believes in yourself. And it's normal to make that mistake. Own up that this is a mistake and I made. That is the culture that you'll set in the team. It's okay to make mistakes and learn from them. So this will happen in lives of a leader when you are navigating very uncertain times. So it's very normal.
So we had another question that kind of went along with that as far as the leader's concerned. Would a leader be concerned with employees leaving the company due to inequality of standards, and then those reasons being published on websites like LinkedIn or Indeed?
Yeah, I mean, I know that I read an article and it says the number of Glassdoor reviews that have gone up and negative has been some 500% or so, because the employees are now finding a way to. That's leaked information in our language. That's information that is not getting channelized within the organization. The leader hasn't created a safe space to hear all the positives and the negatives, and therefore that information has to go out somewhere. So it gets leaked on the social media. It gets leaked in the water cooler conversations. So those gossips and reviews are. So for a leader, it is important to, and we say, hear all the voices. And it's not easy for a leader to create that space and that's the reason sometimes to have facilitators facilitate that conversation becomes very important and I'm not selling myself, but for team coaches to get into that space and really create a safe environment for the leader to be able to operate from. And both the leaders and the team members learn from them. I don't know if I've answered that question, and if you want for me to add something, the person who this question is for the person who's asked this question.
Yeah, so if the person who asked this question has follow-up, please type it, and I think Mike and I will try to address it as best as we can. And how's my audio? I switched to my phone audio. Is there still an echo? Okay.
There's no echo, but you are a little fainter than what.
Okay, sorry about that. My technical uncertainty is stepping in. Yeah, so I think in terms of the voice of the system, one thing that I learned, and I'm bringing in ideas from many different things I've learned in many different disciplines. So Monika said voice of the system. So in our ORSC model, the entity is a group of 2 or more people who have some shared focus, the unifying focus or intent. And the entity has a voice. That's a third entity. Every voice has some wisdom to offer. And one thing that I learned in Myers-Briggs was, especially during times of change, when we don't allow a voice to speak up, that voice has to go somewhere. It's going to go underground. It can go underground in a water cooler conversation, in a gossip, in a WhatsApp group where the management is not there, in a Microsoft Teams group. It can go to Glassdoor. It will go to LinkedIn. It's going to go somewhere. So if you're a leader who is listening to this webinar or the recording, the technique or the idea that we are leaving behind with this part of the conversation is every voice is a voice of the system, and it has unique wisdom, and it may be uncomfortable. It might trigger you, but be curious, be forgiving, and lean into it from a position of curiosity. And one thing I learned was be curious, not furious. If you're curious, it's hard to be both. It's hard to be curious and furious. So when your triggered self is showing up with anger or fear, see if you can say, okay, I heard you. Okay, let's call the curious person to the party. And I used to have a Curious George hat, but I don't have it here. But that's one suggestion that I'm leaving behind. Maybe 2 suggestions. Every voice has wisdom, and be curious. Because if you don't lean into the voice with curiosity, it's going to go underground. It's going to impact you, either underground or overground. Choose wisely, there'll be consequences.
And also, I mean, going back to that question, that there could be a tendency for a person who has been impacted by a gross misuse of power to exaggerate. And there's an element of revenge that comes up. But still it goes back to something that is getting misused in the organization where voices are not safe to speak up. So there could be exaggerations, and the leader can discount those exaggerations, but still has a wisdom, and that's what Ravi is mentioning, that even most malicious remark about the organization has a bit of truth in it. And that, even if you have to take up that 2% of the truth and work around it, it's important because it's a feedback that is coming to you.
Yeah. This reminds me, the 2% truth, what I learned in org training. I like it because when someone says something which is really hard for me to hear, if I tell myself, so my activated part, my triggered self takes over. And if at that point I bring another person from my inside team who says, yeah, Ravi, you know what? I know this is hard to hear, but what if there's 2% truth? That calms down my triggered part and makes that part more open to curiosity instead of curiosity. So the 2% truth, if you're a leader and you're listening to this, think about that. When you get triggered by a person who doesn't have your privilege and power, and you feel like stomping it, be curious. What is the 2% truth?
Yeah, and it's a
I
muscle
really
to
like
train,
that.
actually. It wouldn't come to you naturally. It doesn't come to us naturally. It's really a muscle to
Yeah.
train about picking up only the 2% of what has been shared on social medias and on I mean any kind of social media, actually. The leader
Yeah.
should be concerned about it, and that's the honest answer.
Yeah. Two other things Monika, this reminds me from our org training. One was I think it's the first rule of systems coaching, everybody gets to be right partially.
Everybody is right, but only partially.
Everybody's right, but only partially. So again, this is a way for me to disrupt my patterned ways of being, which are not helping me live my resonant life. So when I get triggered and someone's like, no, you're wrong, I'm right. And perhaps I can bring in my other advisor, my coach, inner coach from my inner team and say, yeah, you know what, you're right. And so is that person, because everybody is right partially. So this could be if you're a leader, this could be another way where you can reprogram your default ways of being. And the last thing I learned with my fourth training, I think it was PATH, it was every complaint is a disappointed dream, or behind every complaint is a disappointed dream. So even if I got a bad review on Glassdoor or on LinkedIn, or I intervene before it gets to that point. Someone says to me something in a meeting directly, and I'm getting triggered, there's a complaint. One thing that helps me is if I get curious and I will start exploring what might be the disappointed dream this person has. It helps me activate the curious part more than the furious part. So this could be some techniques that a leader might use to intervene before it becomes a Glassdoor review or a LinkedIn comment. So I love what you're saying. I noticed one comment from my experience, perhaps one of the greatest downsides to work from anywhere is the loss of opportunities for expressing humor and spontaneity. Challenges here abound, especially with multicultural teams. Do you agree, disagree? What tips do you suggest to increase the team's access to expressing humor and enhance intimacy? So, Monika, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, and I think you went a little fast, Ravi. So can you help me unpack that? I can't read it for myself.
Okay, so let me bottom line it. So the bottom line is, I don't have to read it, I just summarize it. So my sense of what the participant is saying is, when we are work from anywhere, we don't have those accidental collisions, like we are going and getting a cup of coffee, we're just crossing paths. There's not that spontaneity, the humor that emerges when you are face to face.
Yeah, there's a loss of connectivity.
Yeah, there's a loss of connection. Now we are a work from anywhere team. There aren't too many accidental collisions. We're not cracking jokes together. How do you capture that magic, that spontaneity, that humor in a work from anywhere distributed team? Do you have suggestions?
Yeah, and it's a very beautiful question that has been asked, that what is happening in work from anywhere culture is that it becomes very task oriented Zoom calls or a team call, and you've lost the connection, and that builds a lot of stress, not feeling safe, not feeling connected in the organization. So there are specific practices that the team can together design around, as how would you like to be together, and when do you like to be like that. So there's a complete tool that we can introduce in this conversation itself, is that that we open up conversations, and these are conversations around work. Not that you open up conversations for having only fun, but these are conversation around work. But how do you include some of these things that go missing in person's life? And how do you choose to be together? So, for example, if there's a voice that says that I don't feel connected, so how will the team design around it? How do you want to feel connected? And the team will have a lot of ideas. The team is naturally has all the resources to really self manage if you allow as a leader to for the team to go there. So the team will decide, oh, we can have a Friday fun morning, or we can meet somewhere nearby. When there are 101 things that the team can design around, it's just that you have to bring that, you have to feel safe to bring it in the conversation, and the leader has to create that opportunity of what is happening in the team. And there are these frequent check-ins that the leader has. What is happening in the team? What is it that is missing beyond delivering the goals that you have? What does the team want to do about it? How does the team want to create around it? And those are the conversations that the leader has to lead.
And this reminds me, Monika, about a specific tool which you mentioned, which they teach us in org training, which is the DTA, the Design Team Alliance. And there is plenty of flexibility into how you operationalize that tool. It's kind of, in the Agile world, you can call it a team working agreement or organizational working agreement. But there's one specific question in the org training manual, training guide that I remember, which is asking people, what kind of a mood or atmosphere do you want to create in this team? So let's imagine we were to apply this tool, and some of the answers that the team gives, and one of the team members is the person who asked this question in this webinar, is this person is yearning for spontaneity and humor. That person would answer that question is, the vibe I want is I want to get work done, but I want there to be spontaneity and humor. Then you can do what Monika said, which is design around it. How might we integrate spontaneity and humor? And as Monika said, one of the fundamental building blocks of the org model is that the team is naturally creative. It can figure things out. It's got wisdom. In the coactive model, we have a cornerstone of coactive coaching, which is people are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. There are so many parallels in these different models. Ken Schwaber, in the model of Scrum and self-organization, Ken Schwaber would always tell us, ask the team, don't try to solve problems that the team has wisdom to solve in itself, because if you do that, you're inhibiting self-management. You're telling the team, I, as your authority figure, will come and solve your problems. You don't have to solve it, right? So there are so many parallels in these three worlds. So the solution, what I want listeners to take away is, ask the team, use a DTA, ask them what kind of a vibe do you want to create, and how might we do it? You don't have to feel the pressure as a leader to solve all the problems. You just got to create safety and ask the right question and use the right tool in the right context. So beautiful question. Thank you so much for sharing. Another question from Karen, and I'll make a decision. Actually, we just have 5 minutes left. Actually, so I apologize. I lost track of time. 60 minutes goes by so fast when you're having so much fun. Monika, what closing thoughts, if there was just one thing that people took away from this conversation, what would you like it to be? And if there was just one resource that you would like them to consider if they want to go deeper? More is good, but bottom line in a few minutes, if you could suggest closing thoughts.
Yeah, so bottom lining, work from anywhere is a new concept. And to get into a new concept, there will be a lot of things that you have to do together as a team, as an organization. Nobody has done that before, while everybody has an idea of how to do it. So as a leader, if you really open up these conversations once in a while in an organization, because you're building up a new culture, and the leader, as you said, the leader doesn't have all the answers. So you're building up a new culture and you're navigating something which is uncertain, difficult, or something that has never been done before, unprecedented. There will be challenges in between. The leader has to slow down and really understand the challenges that come up. So when you are in a work from anywhere system. What the leader has to be conscious about, that there is no opportunity for a person to build connection, that the person has his or her own set of challenges sitting somewhere else, and the leader has no information about it because there's very limited time that the leader really gets to see the person. So you have to design around it. Have frequent check-ins before every meeting. Have check-ins, and the leader has to lead the way. So if the leader says, "Oh, I had a good time, and let's start working," then you're not leading by good example. The leader really has to start sharing about some of the difficult things that the leader is going through. What is she experiencing just now? And there is huge wisdom in doing that, because when you are opening up and when you are telling this to your team that I am ready to be vulnerable and I am ready to share things, then the team begins to share things, and here you are creating some safe environment, and the team naturally now learns how to navigate that. Every time there's a challenge, just sense into it. Build practices where people are ready to bring their challenges to the leader. Talk about it. How would you like to be if that kind of challenge comes up? What are the ideas around in the team? So nobody has done it before. We are all learning. It's going to be a difficult, rocky, sometimes very smooth path in between, and just be vulnerable enough to learn from it, to evolve from it, and that's what we can offer just now.
Thank you, Monika.
It also helps to
Monika,
have. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. No, there's a lag. I apologize. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I just wanted to add, so it also helps you to have in your journey somebody who understands what it means to create a safe space in the organization. It could be a facilitator, it could be a coach. So that person becomes your ally. It's worthwhile to invest. Either you invest in training yourself as a leader, or you invest in picking up some members of the team and training them, or you invest in somebody from outside. There is some investment that is required in the process.
Yeah, thank you, Monika. I think for me, the biggest takeaway I want a leader to consider is to have someone on your outside team who's not scared of calling your BS and getting fired.
Yeah.
You've got to have someone who's not scared of getting fired and who cares more about serving you than being served by you, the paycheck. Monika, what resources would you recommend? Books, websites, anything that a leader who's listening can use to continue their journey?
Yeah, for me, something that has really helped me is the CRR Global website, and we can put it on the chat. It's called the Relationship Matters podcast, and really talks about how do you build relationships in an organization, and it is agnostic of whether you work in person in an organization, you work you work hybrid, or you work completely remote. That's one resource that is very useful in my mind. And then there is a YouTube channel which is called Reinventing Organizations, and the author of the book, Frederick Laloux, he talks about how do you build a culture in an organization which is safe, which creates psychological safety, which brings in sense of belonging. So that's another good resource to lean into. And actually, there are just number of resources that you could, but these are two of my favorites.
All right. Thank you so much, Monika. So I posted the 3 links: CRR Global website, podcast, and Frederick Laloux's website, Reinventing Organizations. So we hope you got value from this conversation. If you have ideas on other conversations, especially about failures, I want to create a podcast or webinar about just my failures. And so if you are curious about, hey, by the way, have you failed in this area and can we learn something? Let me know, because I have a glorious and ever expanding list of failures. And chances are that I've either failed and I have a story, or I have failed but I haven't realized it. So your kind message will help me create a webinar out of my failure. So I hope you found this useful. Monika, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. Mike, thank you so much for fielding all of the questions. For our listeners, thank you for joining. If you have a suggestion for a future webinar, send Mike and me a message. Or if you happen to be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Mike and I would love to see you at our next meetup, in-person meetup, second Monday of the month at Improving. Thank you. Keep calm and scrum on.
Thank you.
Thank you.